It is very good to see all of you today. Speaking of seeing you, I read about where an invisible man married an invisible woman, and people didn't know what they saw in each other. And they said their children weren't much to look at either. So it's very glad that you're in class today. We're studying an introduction to the book of John in our study of the life of the Christ. And John is presenting his purpose. We're looking at that on your outline, and we were down to discussing the 7 signs that John presents that Jesus performed before his resurrection. And these all demonstrate the glory of Christ, His magnificence, His majesty, as they show Him to be God, show Him to be deity. We had discussed the water to wine, the healing of the nobleman's son, the healing of the man at the pool called Bethesda. And we were down now to begin the feeding of the 5,000. We looked at many of these during our vacation Bible school in some depth, but as I mentioned them, looking at them a little bit with you. John 6, the first 14 verses record the feeding of the 5,000. And as we will see later on in the discussion of this outline, that when Jesus performed these signs, he taught a lesson. There's a lesson here in John 6 that has to do with the feeding of the 5,000. Now, he took the bread of a lad that was there, had 5 barley loaves. Barley was inferior grain, not the very best of bread-making material, but that's what the boy had. And 2 fish, and John tells us they were small fish. So 2 fish, 2 small fish, and 5 barley loaves, and there were about 5,000 men that ate. We don't know how many women or children ate. Jesus took it and prayed over it, and then just kept on giving it to the disciples, who kept on giving it to the people as much as they wanted. They all ate all they wanted, and they were filled. Jesus never gave men a snack. Verse 11 says, as much as they wanted. So no one had to hold off eating what he wanted because he thought there would not be enough. He ate until he was filled. And if you take notes on this material, the idea, as much as they wanted, Jesus always gave a full meal. He gave that spiritually. And then Jesus taught, don't waste. So they took up what was left over, and they gathered 12 baskets of fragments. So they had meals following the meal. People had leftovers, and we serve a God who gives leftovers. Now, that's the healing or the feeding of the 5,000 that showed Jesus to be the master of quantity. He was not limited by 5 and 2. He could multiply that. He was the master of quantity. But now there's a lesson that goes with it. Verse 22, on the following day, when the people who were standing on the other side of the sea saw that there was no other boat there except that one which his disciples had entered, and that Jesus had not entered the boat with his disciples, but his disciples had gone away alone. However, other boats came from Tiberias near the place where they ate bread. Now notice that. Near the place where they ate bread after the Lord had given thanks. Now that's what we read in the first 14 verses. So they're near that very same place. When the people therefore saw that Jesus was not there, nor his disciples, they also got into boats and came to Capernaum seeking Jesus. And when they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, Rabbi, when did you come here? Jesus answered them and said, most assuredly I say to you, and you may have verily, verily, or truly, truly, I say to you, you seek me. All right, now they're looking for him. They said, when did you come here? Now Jesus says, you seek me. Now here's your key word in this. Not. You seek me not because you saw the signs. Jesus says you did not look for me because you were convinced by my feeding you that I am the Messiah, that I am the Son of God. You weren't convinced by the signs. You didn't follow me as a follower of the Son of God, the Messiah who has come. That's not why you're here. And we would all do well to ask ourselves the question, why am I here? What's my motivation? Not because you saw the signs and you add in there and were convinced, became believers. I'm sorry. Did I not say chapter 6 of John? I'm in verse 26.
Yes, 5, Martin, I did not.
I'm very sorry. You should have asked me a long time ago.
Chapter 6.
Yeah. I rested a little bit, so I've got a little more energy now. So I really covered 5. It was just fast you didn't hear.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
I'm looking at sleep.
Yeah, well. All right, John 6:26. Most assuredly I say to you, you seek me not because you saw the signs and became believers. Circle it. But, not, but. 2 key words here. You are not seeking me because you are believers in me as the Messiah, the Son of God. That's John's purpose. John 20, 30, and 31. That's the purpose of the signs, to cause people to believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing they may have life in his name. They didn't become believers. So Jesus said, you are not seeking me as now people who want to follow me, who believe what I have been teaching. That's not why you're here. Well, why are they here? But here's the reason. Do you all have the cause? Now that assigns the reason. Here's a cause. You follow me, you seek me because you ate of the loaves and were, everybody have filled here? Now if you mark filled and you go back over to verse 11 and you mark as much as they wanted and you connect them, you have a divine commentary. As much as they wanted means they ate till they were full. Jesus says, you're not following me because what I did with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish convinced you that I am the Son of God, whom I've claimed to be, and what the sign was designed to convince you. But you followed me because you want me to provide physical bread for you. Jesus said the physical sign didn't produce the spiritual faith. You're here because you want a bread maker. You're here because you want somebody to produce for you materially, provide for you materially. And then he says, do not labor for the food which perishes, this physical food, circle it, but labor for the food which endures to everlasting life, which the Son of Man will give you. because God the Father has set his seal on him. All right, so Jesus said, you missed it. Now you have another opportunity. Don't be centered in on material things. You're wanting a material king. You're wanting someone to be the ruler who provides for you all the time. Don't set your mind on material things. Learn the spiritual truths. Become a believer in me so that you might have eternal life. And then he's going to teach them further. And finally, these who are just there for the material are going to get so disgusted with Jesus that they come from beside him and walk around behind him and turn around and walk away. That's what the Greek language shows us happened there. So a lesson goes with feeding of the 5,000, the master of quantity. And that was and is my complaint about us just looking at the stories themselves and missing the teaching. And that's generally what we have done over the years in my experience. Now, in John 6:19-21, we have the fifth sign of Jesus walking on the water. And there we see his mastery over natural law. Immediately upon the feeding of the 5,000, verse 15 is the key to this whole section of walking on the water. Therefore, when Jesus perceived, now he had fed them, they were looking for an earthly king. Jesus perceived that they were about to come and seize him. That's what the word take there means. Seize him by force. Now that's what they're going to do to him in the Garden of Gethsemane. But the purpose here is different. They seized him there to take him off to be crucified. They were about to come and seize him by force in order to make him king. An earthly king that will provide for them. They were about to take him by force to make him a king. He departed again to the mountain by himself alone. All right, he left. When they were about to come and make him king, he realized that. He left. He would not have any part of it. Now, there are two or three things of importance on this. I mentioned this in our VBS. Premillennialists say that Jesus came to earth to be an earthly king. He came to earth intending to set up an earthly kingdom. But the Jews rejected him, and so he set up the church as an emergency measure until he could go back to heaven and regroup and come back and get it right the second time. Now that's what they teach. They don't phrase it that way, but that's the gist of their teaching. Now I have a question. If Jesus came to earth to be an earthly king, why didn't he let them make him an earthly king right here? I'm sorry?
The wrong kind of king.
Yeah, but they say, premillennialists say, he came to be that kind of king. He came to be a king on earth. That's what they teach. These folks who talk about end times and him reigning 1,000 years on the earth, the whole gist of that is he came the first time, this time, to be an earthly king, but the Jews rejected him. He didn't know they were going to reject him. The Jews right here want to make him a king. If that's why he came, he should have said, good, that's what I came to do. That's not what he did. He left so they could not make him an earthly king. And if one verse in all the Bible answers the premillennial silliness, this verse ought to. The one opportunity he had on earth to allow himself to be made a king, he turned it down. He didn't come to set up an earthly king. His kingdom, as you pointed out, is spiritual. And that's what he will tell Pilate later, isn't it? My kingdom is not of this world. Now, that's the key, that verse. They were about to come make him a material king, and he left, is the key to the walking on the water. Now, when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into the boat, and went over the sea toward Capernaum. And it was already dark, and Jesus had not come to them. Now see the details John gives us here. Then the sea arose. It boiled up. That's the idea of the word there. It boiled up because a great wind was blowing. You ever been out on the water and wind come up and the whitecaps come around and you're trying to get a little boat back to shore? And you're bouncing on the... I thought my aunt was going to kill us one day trying to get us back to shore. But she got us there. I hung on for every bit of worth I had. Those waves were coming and we were bouncing. Well, that's what these disciples are in now. But they would have been in a sailboat. And you can imagine what the wind is doing. Or a rowboat. They saw Jesus. Well, the sea arose because a great wind was blowing. So when they had rowed about, now you have some translations, King James has the Old English terminology there and measure. The New King James translates it 3 or 4 miles. That's a pretty accurate translation. They had rowed 3 or 4 miles, so they're going across a pretty big lake, the Sea of Galilee. They saw Jesus walking on the sea. Now, notice the condition of the sea. The sea is boiling up because a great wind is blowing, and they see Jesus walking on the sea. They're fighting a boat. They're trying to stay afloat. And here comes Jesus walking on the sea and drawing near the boat. So he's coming near them. And they were afraid. Now, if you read the parallels, you'll learn that they thought he was a ghost. They thought he was a spirit. And they became afraid. Circle. But he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." Then they willingly, see, a lot of it, John's purpose was not to give the entirety of the event. The parallels tell us about Peter wanting to walk on water. But John didn't include that. That's not his purpose in writing this. They willingly received him into the boat, and immediately, key word, immediately the boat was at the land where they were going. Now, why would I say verse 15 is the key to that? Now, here's the reason. The disciples are among the Jews who are looking for an earthly kingdom. In Acts 1, after his resurrection, before his ascension, they say, "Will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel?" So they are among these people who are looking for an earthly kingdom. And no doubt they were terribly disappointed in Jesus for not allowing these people to come and make him an earthly king. Even though they were with him for 3.5 years, constantly, they didn't get it. They didn't put it together mentally. So they didn't see his spiritual emphasis. They're still looking for something earthly. No doubt they're terribly disappointed and let down that the one opportunity now that we've had so far to make him a king, set up this kingdom so we can be rulers, he's turned it down. And it seems that in lieu of that, see, you keep things in context. That's why I gripe about just studying the stories. You keep things in context. This is in the context of feeding the 5,000 and declining being made an earthly king. And then the lesson that picks up in verse 22 shows they were looking for an earthly provider who would make bread for them. They didn't, any of them, get the spiritual emphasis, including the disciples. But now Jesus comes walking on the water, a tempestuous sea, to show them, I have much more power than an earthly king would have had.
Said about there, when he got in the ship, or boat or whatever you call it, and everything, and immediately he was there to the side of the lake. That right there ought to convince you in the first place. Because just by him just stepping in there, the next thing you know, you realize
They're at land.
There's land. I mean,
Yeah.
you out in the middle of the ocean, and it waves bouncing and everything else like that. Then you end up just he steps in, you looking at him, and the next thing you know,
You're land.
standing there.
And this is the Sea of Galilee. So study a little bit on the Sea of Galilee, and you get the idea of these tempestuous winds that would come up on that sea. But yeah, we're immediately, John says, they're at land. Now, John omits the episode of Peter, but you can go to the parallels and put that in. But the point is, Jesus is saying to these disciples, I have much more power than I would have had I allowed them to make me an earthly king. You're looking for something material. I have much more power than that. My kingdom is spiritual. You need to see the point. That's what he's saying to them in this incident of walking on the water. When Peter started falling, you all know the story. What did Jesus say to him? What? Oh, you of little faith. Little what? That's spiritual. That's not material. Oh, you of little faith. You just saw me feed 5,000 people. Don't you think I could allow you to walk on water if I can walk on water? Oh, you of little faith. See, faith is their problem. They missed the story. They missed the point. They missed the illustration. That the feeding of the 5,000 showed him to be the Messiah whom he claimed to be in order to produce faith in him. Jesus said to Peter, oh, you of little faith. So you need, I'm saying again to you, put things in context. You can pull them out and study them and make a lot of lesson applications. But if you miss the context, you're just using it as an illustration. You're not teaching what the text says. So Jesus walked on water. Then we go to John 9, where he healed the blind man. This is a sign intended to produce faith, just like all of them. And the healing of the blind man occupies this entire chapter. He sees this man as he passes by that's blind. And there is no instance, no record in this whole account of the blind man asking Jesus to heal him. Jesus asked him, did he want to be healed? But there's no account of him saying, Rabbi, heal me. His disciples said, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents? That's the Jewish idea that if anyone was afflicted with a disease, it was because of sin. Either they had committed sin or their parents had committed sin, and they had inherited that, which sounds a lot like Calvinism that didn't come on for many, many years. Jesus answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned, circle it, but in order that the works of God should be revealed in him. All right, the works of God were intended for what purpose? I'm sorry?
For the teaching of the miracle.
All right, in order to produce faith in him as the Son of God, as the Messiah. All right, here's an account that I'm going to use, this man did not sin, nor his parents. I'm going to use this to show I'm the Messiah. This is going to be used for the glory of God. I must work the works. Now I want you to underscore and keep in mind this idea of works. I must work the works of him who sent me. Verse 3, the works of God. While it is day, the night is coming when no one can work. As long as I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. And then he healed the man, told him to go wash. And then the Pharisees jumped on the man because he was healed on the Sabbath day. You're walking, you took your bed up, you're walking on the Sabbath day, and that violates our tradition. You need to mark that down. They will call it the law, but it's not the law of God. It's the law of the Pharisees, their tradition. And the Pharisees question him about this. They know he was blind. Everybody there knows he's been blind all these years. He's seeing. The Pharisees can't answer that, so they try to imply this is not really the blind man. So they even call his parents in, and they say, is this your son who was blind? The parents are afraid of being put out of the synagogue, so all they will admit is, this is our son, and he was born blind. Verse 20. But we don't know how he sees. And then they say, this is real big of them, parents, he is of age, ask him, he will speak for himself. We're not going to get involved in this. We're afraid we'll be put out of the synagogue. You just ask him. And so they call him again and they quiz him as to what he did. And in verse 27, he's getting kind of exasperated with them. He answered them, I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear again? Do you also want to what? Be his disciple. What's the purpose of the signs? To make people believe in Jesus as the Son of God and become his disciples. Are you asking all these questions because you want to become a disciple? I think he asked this. We'll have to get to heaven and know for sure. I think he asked this sarcastically because he knew they didn't want to be his disciple. So they reviled him. And they said, you are his disciple. But we are Moses' disciples. We know that God spoke to Moses. As for this fellow, we do not know where he is from. The man answered and said to them, why? This is a marvelous thing that you do not know where he is from, yet he has opened my eyes. You claim to know everything. You can't even tell where this man is from, but he opened my eyes. Now we know, now listen what this man says. We know that God does not hear sinners. If this man were a sinner, like you're implying that he is, God would not have listened to him when he besought God to heal my blindness. We know that. You know that. We know that, he said. You have to be in a relationship with God to be able to pray to him and to receive a positive response. Circle it. We know that God does not hear sinners, but if anyone is a what? All right, you go back up. Do you want to become his disciple and mark worshiper of God? That's what the signs were intended to make these people, worshipers of God, and does his will, be obedient to him. He hears him. Now, if you want to know whose prayers will be acceptable, here they are in verse 31. Here is the criteria. Since the world began, it has been unheard of that anyone opened the eyes of one who was born blind. If this man, notice it, mark it, highlight it, do whatever you need to do. If this man were not from whom? The signs were to prove the deity of Jesus. so that people would believe in him as the Son of God, become his followers, and have eternal life. They made material things out of what was spiritual. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. Now, Nicodemus in John 3 said basically the same thing. We know that you are a man from God, because if you were not from God, you couldn't do these signs that we've seen you do. Now they said, you were completely born in sins, and are you teaching us? And they, notice, cast him out of the synagogue. The margin of the New King James says they excommunicated him. That's what his parents didn't want to happen. That's why they wouldn't answer for him. He's of age. Let him answer for himself.
You're talking about on their table, God don't answer, the sinner's prayer. But he did not ask for God to take him heal his blindness, did he?
No.
So therefore, see, he done it on his own.
No, here's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Jesus would have been the one who prayed and was heard. They're accusing Jesus of being a sinner. This man said, you and I both know God won't listen to a sinner. But he listened to him and he healed me. So he can't be a sinner. That's what he's teaching. Very good. That makes sense. Okay. Now Jesus heard they cast him out. And when he had found him, he said to him, do you what? Believe in the Son of God. Now this man didn't know Jesus was the Son of God. All he knew was he'd healed him. He answered and said, who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him, in order that I may believe in him? And Jesus said to him, you have both seen him, and it is he who is talking to you. Then he said, Lord, what?
I believe.
I believe. Then he did what? He worshiped him. What brought the man to believe? The sign, the miracle. But he didn't know Jesus was the Son of God. Do you believe in the Son of God? Who is he? It's me. Yes, I believe. You've convinced me that you're the Son of God. Then he worshiped him. If Jesus were not deity, he could not have accepted worship. Worshipped him. And Jesus said, for judgment I have come into this world, that those who do not see may see. Now here he's speaking of this blind man. He hadn't seen. He had not seen physically, nor had he seen spiritually up until this point. And that those who see, that's the Pharisees, who claim they are righteous, who claim they are the enlightened ones, may be made blind. Signs produce two things. Signs produce belief and unbelief. In the Pharisees, the sign produced unbelief, because they didn't accept the application. Then some of the Pharisees who were with him heard these words and said to him, are we blind also? Are you talking to us? Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say, we see, therefore your sin remains. If you truly were ignorant, blind spiritually, you wouldn't be in sin for not believing until you saw the evidence. But you saw the evidence, you see this man, and you willfully rejected the evidence. You're not blind anymore. You've seen the evidence, and you willfully rejected it. Your sin remains. Yeah, I'm talking about you. And this is the case of a man today, a person who willfully rejects the evidence that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and who willfully refuses to obey him. They're living in sin. But it's a willful ignorance when the evidence is presented. So the healing of the blind man, the master of misfortune, is to teach the lesson: don't center in on the material, center in on the spiritual, and let the evidence point you to the spiritual, that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. And then probably, maybe one of the most familiar is Jesus raising Lazarus in John 11, which shows Jesus is the master of death. Jesus willfully, and we studied this in much detail in VBS, so I'll just highlight it. Jesus willfully delayed going to where Lazarus had died. And when he got there, he'd been in the tomb 4 days, and his sister said, he stinks, he's decaying. His body's in the process of decaying. Jesus said, take away the stone. And Martha, well, I believe Martha, you checked me out there, said, Lord, he's stinking. Why are you moving the stone? His body is already decaying. See, they didn't embalm. That's why they buried immediately. They wrapped in the spices and the ointments, and they buried immediately. And that body began to decay. And Jesus said, Lazarus. Now, he said it with a loud voice, not because Lazarus needed to hear him, but because the ones around him needed to hear him. That's what the text shows you. Lazarus, come forth. You get the picture? Lazarus wobbled out of the tomb because he was bound. He didn't arise and everything fall off of him. Remember, when Jesus rose, the clothes, the bindings were still there in the tomb. Lazarus wore his out of the tomb. And Jesus said, loose him and let him go. Get all that off of him. Now, when Jesus rolled the stone away, true or false, he was stinking? True. When he wobbled out, he was stinking? False. Yeah. So he went from a stinker to a non-stinker instantaneously, didn't he? In the resurrection from the dead. Now, would that convince you? Before you answer, depends on your spiritual heart. If you're not willing to be convinced, you'd do what the modernists today do. You'd come up with some natural explanation, like Lazarus wasn't really dead. He had just passed out. He was in a coma. He was swooning, and the coolness of the tomb finally awakened him. That's pretty good to make a stinker a non-stinker out of a swoon, isn't it? That's what they said about Jesus. That's what the modernists say about the resurrection of Jesus. He was just unconscious, and being in the cool tomb that period of time aroused him, and he was able to come out. They never did have told us how he got that stone rolled away by himself. If he was just a man that was unconscious, then became conscious. Too many flaws in their contrivances to dismiss. But those are the 7 signs that John recorded to show the deity of Jesus. Questions or comments? Now, he recorded, number 3 on your outline, 7 I am statements, in which he uses 7 tremendous metaphors which are expressive of his saving relationship toward the world. So when we were sitting in English class and they were teaching us about metaphors, it really did have something to do with understanding the Bible. Nobody ever told us that, but it did. So you tell your boys and girls that so they'll learn everything they can in school so they can understand the Bible better. I am is found 23 times in the book of John. In addition to the statements I've listed for you there, it is found in John 6:20 where he says, it is I, ego. I am in Greek. And also the other passages I give you there. And John 4:25 and 26, Jesus uses the I am to show that he is the Messiah. The woman said to him, this is the woman at the well at Sychar, I know that Messiah is coming, who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. Jesus said to her, I who speak to you, he. Is your am in italics? I who speak to you, he. I am he. I am that one. I am. Or is your he in italics? All right. I who speak to you am. Am. I am. Then in John 6:35, Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall never hunger, and he who believes in me shall never thirst. Now, see, that's a part of the lesson he's taught from feeding the 5,000. Drop down to verse 41. The Jews then complained about him because he said, I am the bread which came down from heaven. Verse 48, he says, I am the bread of life. Verse 51, I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I shall give is my flesh, which I shall give for the life of the world. And he's pointing toward the crucifixion. How do we eat the flesh of Jesus that was given for the life of the world? I'm sorry? The bread reminds us of it in the Lord's Supper, but how do we eat of it?
By doing what he wanted.
Do what?
The physical thought.
Doing his will.
Resurrection in your mind.
Not really.
The Bible, we study the Bible.
Doing what he asked us to do.
All right, by obeying him.
Obey.
We eat the bread by doing what he asks us to do in obedience. We are believing in him and responding to him in obedience. That's how we eat his bread, ate his flesh that was given for us. We partake of it. We partake of what it made possible. Metaphor, a metaphor. We partake of what it made possible by obedience. That makes sense? By obedience. And that is physical. We physically obey his will. And then in John 8:12, he says, I am the light of the world. And he repeated that in John 9, verse 5. So I've come to give light. I'm the light. Come to the light. Men love darkness, John 3, because their works were evil. I'm the light. They wouldn't come to me because I'm the light. John 10, when he's talking about the sheepfold, verses 7 and 9, he says, I'm the door of the sheep. And he gave the illustration that if anyone tries to get in the sheepfold by climbing in instead of coming through the door, he's a thief. So you can't steal eternal life. You have to come God's way. You have to come in the door God made possible, and that door is Jesus. And then John 10, 11 and 14, he says, I'm the good shepherd. He said, I know my sheep, and my sheep know my voice, and they follow me. That's a physical illustration of a spiritual truth. Jesus' sheep are those who've obeyed him, and we know his voice when he speaks because we have it. And then in John 11:25, he says, I am the life. I'm the resurrection. I'm the life. John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So if we're going to have eternal life, it's in Jesus. Same passage, John 11:25, I am the resurrection. John 14:6, I just quoted, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And in John 15:1 and 5, I am the true vine, and you disciples are the branches, not churches. Denominationalism uses that to say all the churches are the branches in Jesus the vine. That's not what Jesus taught there. He was talking to the disciples when he said, I am the vine and you are the branches. Well, I wanted to get to these 7 witnesses. Lord willing, next time we'll take up there. Thank you for listening and participating.